Most people think the biggest problem in life is failure. But surprisingly, failure is not the problem for many people. The real problem is distraction. Every day our attention is pulled in many directions. We look at what other people are doing. We compare our progress with theirs. We wonder why they seem faster, more successful, or more confident. Slowly our focus moves away from our own life. And without realizing it, we spend more time thinking about other people's progress than building our own. But here is something important to understand. Your attention is one of the most valuable things you have. It works like sunlight. Wherever sunlight shines, things begin to grow. If sunlight shines on a plant, the plant grows. If it shines on a tree, the tree grows stronger. Your attention works the same way. Whatever you focus on begins to grow in your life. If you focus on problems all day, problems begin to feel bigger. If you focus on other people's success, comparison begins to grow. But if you focus on your own learning and effort, your progress begins to grow. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. Not more, not less. The difference is how we choose to use that time and where we place our attention. Some people spend many hours worrying about other people's success, comparing their lives, or thinking about negative thoughts. When our attention stays on these things, they slowly grow stronger in our mind. Problems feel bigger. Doubts become louder. But our attention can also be used in a different way. When we choose to focus on learning, practicing, and improving ourselves, something powerful begins to happen. Our skills grow. Our confidence grows. Our life slowly begins to move forward. Time itself is neutral. It simply passes minute by minute, day by day. But the direction of our life depends on what we focus on during that time. It is important to understand something here. Looking at successful people is not a bad thing. In fact, it can be very helpful. When we see someone who is doing well, we can learn from their habits, their discipline, and the way they improve over time. We can study how they practice, how they stay consistent, and how they handle challenges. That kind of attention can inspire us and give us direction. But there is a big difference between learning from someone and becoming lost in their life. Many people spend hours analyzing every detail about other people's success, their lifestyle, or their personal choices. They talk about it, compare it, and sometimes even criticize it. But none of that helps us grow. The real value is not in watching their life closely. The real value is in asking one simple question. What can I learn from this? And how can I apply it to my own life? That is why attention is so important. When you change what you focus on, you slowly change what your mind begins to see. And when your attention changes, the direction of your life can begin to change as well. When you keep focusing on negative things, your mind starts looking for more negative things. If you think something will go wrong, you notice every small problem. A small mistake suddenly feels very big. After a while, it can feel like bad luck keeps following you. But often it is not luck. It is simply where your attention is going. Your mind keeps seeing more of what it is already looking for. That is why attention is so important. When you change what you focus on, you slowly change what your mind begins to see. And that can change the direction of your life. Imagine holding a small magnifying glass under the sun. When sunlight passes through the glass, the light becomes stronger and more focused. In fact, it can become powerful enough to create heat. Focus works in the same way. When your attention is scattered everywhere, your energy becomes weak. But when your attention is focused in one direction, your energy becomes powerful. This is why people who achieve great things often share one simple habit. They protect their focus. They are not perfect. They are not always the most talented. But they choose where to place their attention. Instead of constantly watching what others are doing, they ask themselves a different question. What is the most important thing I can improve today? Let me share another simple story. Two gardeners planted seeds on the same day. The first gardener spent a lot of time walking around the neighborhood looking at other gardens. Some gardens had taller plants. Some had brighter flowers. Every time he saw them, he felt discouraged. He kept thinking that his plants were growing too slowly. Because he spent so much time worrying about other gardens, he sometimes forgot to water his own. The second gardener did something different. Every morning he quietly watered his plants. He pulled out the weeds and gave the soil time. At first his garden looked small and simple, nothing special compared to the others. But week after week he kept taking care of it. After some time, something interesting happened. The first gardener still had a garden full of half-grown plants, because his attention was always somewhere else. But the second gardener slowly began to see healthy flowers growing everywhere. Not because his seeds were better, but because his attention was in the right place. And this is how growth often works in life. The more time we spend looking at other people's gardens, the less time we spend taking care of our own. Real progress usually grows quietly, when we give our attention to our own effort instead of constant comparison. Another helpful way to understand this is to imagine your mind as a camera lens. When a camera lens is out of focus, the picture becomes blurry. You cannot clearly see what is important. But when the lens becomes sharp and focused, everything becomes clear. Your mind works the same way. When your attention jumps from one person to another, from one comparison to another, your thinking becomes blurry. But when you bring your focus back to yourself, your direction becomes clearer. You begin to see your next step. You begin to see what you can improve. And most importantly, you begin to trust your own path. If you want to try something simple today, here is a small exercise. For the next 24 hours, try to notice when your mind starts comparing your life with someone else's life. When this happens, gently bring your attention back and ask yourself one simple question. What is one small step I can take today? Maybe you practice a skill for 10 minutes. Maybe you read a few pages of a book. Maybe you simply finish a task you have been avoiding. Small actions may not look impressive, but they move your life forward. When you repeat these small actions day after day, something powerful begins to happen. Your confidence grows. Your progress becomes visible. And your attention becomes calmer. One day you may realize something surprising. The life you wanted was never built by watching others. It was built quietly, step by step, by focusing on your own path. So remember this simple idea. Your attention is like sunlight. Wherever you place it, growth begins. If you place it on comparison, comparison grows. But if you place it on your own learning and effort, your life begins to grow in the direction that truly belongs to you. Have you ever tried to imagine your future and asked yourself questions like where your life will go, whether you will succeed, and whether everything will work out? The truth is that none of us really knows. And maybe that is not a problem. In fact, it might be one of the most beautiful parts of life. Because sometimes the best things in our lives begin with something very simple, not knowing what will happen next. Sometimes in life, we spend a lot of time thinking about the future. We wonder who we will become, where we will go, and what our life will look like in the years ahead. If you ask me what my life will be like in 5 years, I will answer honestly. The truth is, I don't know. There are many things in life that we simply cannot know in advance. No one knows when a war will begin or when it will end. No one knows if the project we are working on today will be completely successful. No one knows what tomorrow will bring. We don't know where the small decisions we make today will lead us in the future. And we don't know what opportunities may appear on the road we are walking. Sometimes, not knowing makes us feel anxious. We want certainty. We want control. We want to see the result before everything happens. But there is another way to look at life that many people forget. Sometimes the beauty of life comes from the fact that we do not know what will happen next. And that is what we will talk about today, the joy of not knowing. If we think about it carefully, maybe not knowing the future is not a bad thing. In fact, because we do not know everything, life can still surprise us. If you already knew exactly what would happen in your life might become very boring. Every joy would already be planned. Every opportunity would already be written. Every meeting would already be expected. Imagine if you knew everything about your life. You knew who you would meet. You knew when you would succeed or fail. You knew exactly when something good would happen. It might sound safe, but at the same time it would remove many beautiful moments from life. Because one of the most wonderful things in life is surprise. We do not know that tomorrow we might meet someone who changes our life. We do not know that a small opportunity today might open a big door in the future. And sometimes the things we worry about the most may actually lead us to better places. Maybe that is why, instead of trying to control everything, we can learn to accept uncertainty. Not with fear, but with a little curiosity. Because sometimes the joy of life comes from not knowing what will happen next. When you accept that you do not know everything, you also give yourself more freedom. You do not need to have all the answers right now. And you do not need every step in your life to be perfect. Sometimes we believe that life must follow a perfect plan. We think we need to know every step before we begin. We want a clear map for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, or even the rest of our lives. But real life rarely works that way. I once knew someone who planned their future very carefully. They had goals, timelines, and a very clear picture of what their life would look like in the coming years. Everything seemed organized and certain. But one unexpected accident changed everything. Suddenly, the future they had imagined could no longer happen in the way they planned. Watching that moment made me realize something very important. Life is far more unpredictable than we think. No matter how carefully we plan, there will always be things we cannot control. And maybe that is why life is not really about knowing every step ahead. Maybe it is more about learning how to move forward, even when the future is still unknown. Many people who live meaningful and fulfilling lives did not start with a perfect master plan. They simply started somewhere. They tried things, learned along the way, and allowed life to guide them little by little. Sometimes a new interest appears. Sometimes a new opportunity opens a door we never expected. When we always wait for the perfect plan, we may never start moving. But when we allow ourselves to explore, life becomes more open and alive. In the end, what really shapes our lives is not a perfect master plan, but the small actions we take each day. When we focus on living well today, learning something new, helping others, and doing our best with what we have, the future slowly takes care of itself. One meaningful day leads to another, and step by step, a meaningful life begins to form. Instead of waiting for a perfect plan, sometimes the best thing we can do is simply show up and live today as fully as we can. You do not always need a detailed map for your entire journey. Sometimes all you need is enough courage to take the next step and enough trust to believe that the road will slowly appear as you walk. You only need to keep walking, step by step, and trust that life will slowly reveal its path to you. Many beautiful things in our lives begin in this quiet and unexpected way. A surprising meeting, an opportunity that arrives at the right moment, or a small decision that later changes our whole journey. At that time, we usually do not understand the meaning of what is happening. But when we look back years later, we realize that life was quietly guiding us in the right direction in very mysterious ways. So instead of worrying too much about the things we do not know, maybe we can try to see them differently. Maybe uncertainty is not something to fear. Maybe it is a space where wonderful things can happen. Maybe it is where new dreams begin, where new opportunities appear, and where better versions of ourselves are slowly born. And sometimes all we really need to do is simply keep walking. We do not need to know exactly where the road will lead, and we do not need to see the whole future. We only need to walk forward with a little hope and a little curiosity about the good things that may be waiting ahead. In truth, life has never asked us to know everything. Life only asks us to keep going, one day at a time, one step at a time. Along the way, we slowly learn the things that truly matter. We begin to understand who we are, what we really want, and what gives meaning to our lives. So if today you feel like you don't know what your future will look like, remember that this feeling is completely normal. No one truly knows the whole road ahead. But maybe life has never required us to know everything. It only asks us to keep moving forward. And maybe one day, when you look back at your journey, you will realize something beautiful. The things you once did not know were the very things that led you to the most wonderful places in your life. And perhaps that is the true joy of not knowing. Have you ever paused for a moment, looked at your life, and felt that something inside you has quietly grown bigger than the life around you? Maybe your job no longer feels right. Your daily routines no longer excite you the way they used to. The way you think and live no longer reflects the person you feel yourself becoming. If you have ever felt this way, remember one important thing. You are not lost. You are growing. You are entering a new chapter of your life, a chapter where something inside you is asking for a life that feels more true, more meaningful, and more aligned with who you really are. In this episode, we will slowly walk through a simple 5-step journey. A journey to release what no longer fits your life, reconnect with who you truly are, and gently build a life where you feel calmer, freer, and more alive. So, let's begin. Before changing your life, start by noticing the energy you are living in. Energy is not just positive thinking or good vibes the way people usually describe it. Energy is everything around you every day. It is the place where you live, the work you do, the people you spend time with, and even the thoughts that repeat again and again in your mind. Energy is the feeling you carry when you wake up in the morning. It is the atmosphere in the room where you spend most of your time. It is the emotion you feel when you talk with someone. And it is also the feeling that stays with you after the conversation ends. Do you feel lighter and peaceful, or do you feel strangely tired and drained? Everything around you carries energy, and whether you notice it or not, your mind and your body are constantly absorbing it. So before you try to change anything big in your life, pause for a moment and ask yourself a simple question. What kind of energy am I living in right now? Does my environment support me, or does it slowly drain me? When you begin to see this clearly, something important happens. You start understanding what truly nourishes you and what may no longer belong in your life. Once you begin to notice the energy around you, the next step becomes clearer. Sometimes the reason we feel stuck is not because we are weak or unmotivated. It is simply because the environment around us no longer supports our growth. Just like plants need healthy soil to grow, people also need the right environment. You cannot grow in a place that no longer nourishes you. Every space, every person, and every habit carries its own energy. Think about the places you visit in your daily life. Some places make you feel calm the moment you arrive. But there are also places where the moment you step in, you feel a quiet heaviness inside your chest. People are the same. There are people who make you feel relaxed and comfortable every time you talk with them. And there are others who leave you feeling tired after every conversation, even when nothing obviously bad happened. Your body often senses these things long before your mind explains them. So if you want to reinvent your life, start by gently changing your environment. You do not need dramatic changes. Small shifts can already make a big difference. Work from a different cafe one day. Rearrange your desk. Clean your room. Open the windows and let sunlight enter your space. Spend more time in places that feel calm. And slowly reduce the time you spend with people who constantly drain your energy. Very often a new chapter in life begins with a simple realization. This environment no longer fits the person I am becoming. And that realization is not something to fear. It is actually a sign that you are growing. The next step in this journey is learning to let go. Over the years, we collect many things in our lives. Habits, beliefs, ways of thinking, expectations from other people, and even old versions of ourselves. Some of these once protected us. Some once helped us survive difficult moments. But as we grow, not everything continues to fit the life we are moving toward. Letting go is a little like cleaning a room that is slowly filled up with things from the past. If changing your environment cleans the outside world, letting go cleans the inside world. Think about old clothes. They were perfect for a certain time in your life. But as you grow, they simply no longer fit the person you are becoming. The same thing happens with thoughts, habits, and relationships. Some ideas once helped you feel safe, but now they may hold you back. Some habits once protected you, but now they may keep you stuck in your comfort zone. Some relationships were once very close, but now you may realize that you are walking on different paths. And that is a completely natural part of life. People change. Energy changes. Priorities change. Growth is simply part of being alive. So ask yourself gently, is there something in my life that I am holding on to only because I am afraid to lose it? Is there a relationship I keep out of habit even though I cannot truly be myself there? Is there a belief about myself that once protected me but now limits who I can become? Letting go does not mean you are rejecting your past. It simply means you are being honest about your future. When you begin letting go of what no longer fits your life, something surprising happens. You start to feel space again. Space to breathe. Space to think clearly. Space for something new to grow. But here is something important to remember. You cannot create a new life while thinking exactly the same way you always have. A different life requires different thinking. When your thinking changes, your choices begin to change as well. And when your choices change, your life slowly begins to move in a new direction. So start asking yourself new questions. How would the better version of me think about this situation? How would the calmer version of me respond right now? How would the confident version of me act today? You do not need to transform everything overnight. Real change usually begins with very small shifts. A slightly better thought. A healthier habit. A calmer reaction in a stressful moment. A clearer boundary with something that drains you. These small changes may look insignificant at first, but over time they slowly shape the person you are becoming. Because the version of you that you want to become is not somewhere far away. That version of you already exists quietly inside you. You are simply learning how to live more like that person through the choices you make each day. And this leads to one of the most important realizations in personal growth. Many people think they must feel ready before they change their life. But in reality, change often works in the opposite direction. You do not wait to feel confident before you speak. You speak and confidence slowly grows. You do not wait to feel capable before learning something new. You start learning and capability begins to grow. You do not wait to become disciplined before taking action. You take small actions every day, and discipline slowly builds. Your new self is not created by thinking about change. Your new self is created by the small ways you choose to live every day. It appears in the habits you repeat, the decisions you make, and the quiet moments when you pause and ask yourself a simple question. What would the better version of me do right now? And every time you follow that answer, even in a small way, you are slowly rebuilding your life. Great lives are rarely built in one dramatic moment. They are built through small choices repeated day after day. One better decision today. Another tomorrow. Over time, these small choices quietly shape an entirely new version of you. Before you finish listening to this episode, take a quiet moment to reflect on your own life. Ask yourself honestly, am I living in an environment that truly supports who I am becoming, or am I staying in a place that slowly drains my energy? Remember this. Every single day gives you a new chance to move closer to the person you want to become. And sometimes the next chapter of your life begins with something very small. A new thought, a small decision, or the quiet courage to admit that you have grown, and that it may be time for your life to grow with you. Most people think a good day is a productive day. A day when we finish many tasks, answer many emails, and check many things off our list. But interestingly, some of the busiest days can also be the days that leave us the most tired and the least happy. So maybe the problem is not how much we do. Maybe the real question is something simpler. What actually makes a day feel good? After thinking about this for a long time, I realized that a good day usually has a balance between three kinds of things. Things you want to do, things you need to do, and things you actually don't need to do at all. First, there are the things you want to do. These are the activities you do simply because you enjoy them. It could be going for a walk, listening to music, exercising, watching a movie, or sitting quietly in a cafe. These moments may look small, but they are important because they remind you that life is not only about responsibilities. They remind you that you are not a machine designed only to complete tasks. You are a human being who also needs joy, curiosity, and freedom. Second, there are the things you need to do. These are your responsibilities, such as working, studying, finishing commitments, or taking care of your family. Sometimes these things are not exciting, but they build something powerful inside you. They build discipline. And discipline slowly creates progress in your life. When you finish the things you need to do, you begin to trust yourself more because you know that when something important appears, you will show up and handle it. But here is something interesting. Many people feel exhausted not because they work too hard, but because their day is filled with the wrong things. This leads to the third category. The things you don't want to do and actually don't need to do either. These are the quiet time wasters that slowly steal your energy. Endless scrolling on social media, arguments that lead nowhere, unnecessary meetings, or habits that do not really improve your life. Often we keep doing them simply out of habit, without even noticing. Once you start noticing these activities, you realize you have choices. Sometimes you can delegate them. Sometimes you can automate them. And sometimes the best decision is simply to stop doing them. When you remove these unnecessary things, something surprising happens. You suddenly have more time and more mental space. That time can go back to the things you truly enjoy and the things that truly move your life forward. So maybe today, instead of asking yourself, how many things did I finish today? Try asking a different question. Did my day have balance? Did I do something I needed to do? Did I do something I genuinely wanted to do? And did I remove something that didn't really matter? Because life is not built from a few big moments. Life is built from many ordinary days. And every day gives us another opportunity to create a little more balance. Sometimes, just one small moment of joy in the middle of a busy schedule can completely change the feeling of the entire day. Have you ever stayed in a situation that slowly drained your energy, but you still kept hoping things would change? Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a job. Maybe it was a part of life that no longer felt right. Yet you stayed. Not because you wanted to suffer, but because a part of you still believed things might become better. Many people live like this for months, sometimes for years. But what most people don't realize is that in almost every difficult moment in life, we are standing in front of 3 doors. One door says change it. Another door says accept it. And the last door says let it go. At first, these choices sound simple, but here is the real problem. Many of the struggles in our lives are not caused by the situation itself. They are caused by standing in front of the wrong door for far too long. Sometimes we keep trying to change things that were never within our control. Sometimes we keep accepting situations that slowly drain our energy. And sometimes we hold on to things that quietly reached their natural end a long time ago. So when something in life causes you pain, the real question is not simply, why is this happening to me? The real question is much simpler. Which door are you standing in front of right now? Because in almost every situation in life, we truly have only 3 choices. If the situation is something within our influence, we can try to change it. If it cannot be changed, we can learn to accept it instead of exhausting ourselves fighting against reality. And if the situation continues to harm our peace of mind, sometimes the healthiest decision is simply to let it go and walk away. Understanding these 3 choices is simple, but knowing which door to walk through is often the hardest part of life. And nowhere does this become clearer than in something that shapes almost every part of our lives: our relationships. A large part of human pain comes from relationships with family, with romantic partners, with friends, or with people we interact with every day. When a relationship becomes difficult, our natural reaction is often to try to change the other person. We want them to understand us more. We want them to behave differently. We want them to become the version of them that we believe they should be. But there is a truth that many people take a long time to accept. You cannot change someone if they do not want to change themselves. You can talk to them. You can share your feelings. You can try to improve communication. But in the end, you cannot live someone else's choices for them. And this is where the three doors become clearer. If the relationship still contains respect, listening, and the willingness to grow, then your choice might be to change the way you communicate and work together to improve the relationship. But if the other person is not willing to change and you still choose to stay, then peace may come from accepting who they truly are instead of constantly hoping they will become someone else. And sometimes there are relationships where, after many attempts, you realize something painful. Their presence in your life only leaves you feeling more exhausted. In those moments, the final choice may be letting go. Not because you hate that person and not because you are weak, but because you also deserve to live in an environment where your mind can feel at peace. Sometimes, one of the most mature decisions in life is knowing when to keep trying and when it is time to stop. But here is a question that many people struggle with. If letting go can bring peace, why do so many people stay in relationships that hurt them? One reason is memory. We remember the beautiful moments from the beginning. The laughter, the conversations, and the small moments that once made us happy. And we begin to believe that if we just try a little harder, maybe things will return to the way they once were. That hope can keep us staying much longer than our hearts can truly handle. Another reason is fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear that if we let go, we might not find anything better. So we stay. Not always because the relationship is healthy, but because familiar pain sometimes feels safer than uncertain freedom. But there is something many people eventually realize. Staying in an unhealthy relationship also has a price. It slowly drains your energy. It makes you feel like you are losing parts of yourself. And over time, it can turn your days into something heavy and exhausting. Sometimes the hardest thing is not letting go of another person. It is letting go of the hopeful version of them that lives inside your mind. The person you hoped they would become. The version of the relationship that existed in your dreams. But when someone finally reaches the courage to let go, they often discover something surprising. Letting go does not always create loss. Sometimes it creates space. Space for peace. Space for growth. And space for healthier relationships to enter your life. And perhaps this is where we begin to understand the deeper meaning of the three doors in life. Not everything in life needs to be held on to. And not every problem needs to be fought endlessly. Sometimes wisdom is not about trying harder. Sometimes wisdom is about choosing the right response. There are things in life that you can change. And when that is the case, the best thing you can do is act with courage. There are things you cannot change. And in those moments, peace often comes from learning to accept reality. And then there are things that the more tightly we hold on to them, the more we slowly lose ourselves. In those moments, the strongest thing you can do may simply be to let go and move forward. Life is not always easy. But when you understand that you always have three choices, change it, accept it, or let it go, you begin to see your challenges in a very different way. Because the quality of our lives is not determined only by what happens to us. It is determined by how we respond to what happens. And sometimes we think we are trapped. But the truth is something much simpler. Most of the time we are simply standing in front of a door we have not yet chosen to walk through. Have you ever had a day when nothing big happened, but you still felt like you were about to break down? One message you have not replied to. One unfinished task. A messy room. A bill to pay. A conversation still in your head. Someone replying more slowly than usual. A bad night of sleep. None of these things feels very serious on its own. But by the middle of the day, you feel more tense, more tired, and more easily upset. Then one small thing happens, and suddenly it feels like too much. If you have ever felt this way, it does not mean you are weak or overreacting. It may simply mean that your mind is already too full. This is a quiet problem in modern life. Many people are not exhausted because of one big crisis. They are exhausted because their minds never get a real break. There is always something coming in. A notification. A short video. Bad news, pressure, comparison, worry. Even small things can take your energy when they keep coming all day. It is like having too many tabs open on a computer. At first, everything still works. Then it slows down. Then it starts to freeze. The human mind can feel the same way. Psychologists call this cognitive overload. It means your brain is carrying too much at once. That is why even small problems can feel very heavy. Not because they are so serious, but because you already have too much inside you. That is why slow internet can suddenly make you angry. One careless comment can stay in your mind for hours. One more question can feel overwhelming. Sometimes the moment is not the real problem. Sometimes your mind was already full before it happened. And when your mind is too full, you stop seeing clearly. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels personal. Everything feels like something you must fix right away. This is also when we fall into another trap. We focus too much on what we do not want. The more you fear something, the more space it takes in your mind. If you are afraid of forgetting something, you keep thinking about it. If you are afraid someone no longer cares, you start noticing every small change. And that only makes you feel more tired. This does not mean that bad things happen just because you think about them. But what you focus on can grow inside your mind. You think about it more. You react to it more. And slowly, it becomes heavier. When your mind is already full, focusing too much on what you fear makes it harder to see what you need to heal and what you need to let go of. That is why sometimes what we need is not to try harder or control everything more. Sometimes what we really need is a pause. Pausing is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is a way to return to yourself. Sometimes what you need is not more advice, more pressure, or more effort. Sometimes you just need space. A quiet moment where you do not need to reply, explain, fix, or prove anything. Because clarity comes when the noise starts to settle. It comes when you stop fighting every thought and every feeling. And here is a simple way to begin. Once a day, if possible, give yourself 20 minutes with no phone, no notifications, and no screens. Do not scroll. Do not multitask. Just sit quietly, walk slowly, or look out of a window. You do not need to solve your whole life in that moment. You do not need to force yourself to feel calm. You only need to notice what is there. Notice what comes up when nothing is distracting you. What thoughts return? What feelings rise? Maybe it is fear. Maybe it is a memory. Maybe it is a person you still think about. Maybe it is a sadness you have been too busy to feel. Just notice that it is there. Not every thought needs an answer. Not every feeling needs an explanation. Not everything inside you needs to be fixed right away. At first, this pause may feel uncomfortable. Your mind may feel louder before it feels quieter. You may feel restless. You may want to check your phone after only a few minutes. But that does not mean it is not helping. It may simply mean that, after a long time, you are finally hearing what has been inside you all along. And if you stay with it, something begins to change. You start to see patterns. You begin to notice which worries are real and which ones are just habits in your mind. You begin to understand that some of your tiredness does not only come from life around you, but also from the constant noise inside you. Many people do not notice this kind of tiredness. It is the tiredness of always arguing in your own mind. Why did they say that? Why am I like this? What if things get worse? What if I made the wrong choice? Why can I not let this go? When this goes on for too long, silence feels strange. Peace feels far away. Not because peace is gone, but because the inner noise has become so normal. But if you keep giving yourself these quiet pauses, something beautiful can happen. The need to keep arguing starts to soften. The noise in your mind becomes quieter. And in that space, peace can slowly enter. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Real strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is the courage to pause. The courage to be honest with yourself. The courage to say, "My mind is too full and I need space." Maybe you are not failing. Maybe you are just tired. Tired of thinking. Tired of reacting. Tired of trying to hold everything together in a world that never seems to slow down. And sometimes healing does not begin when you find the perfect answer. Sometimes it begins when you finally give yourself permission to stop. So maybe this is the reminder you need today. You do not need to wait until you are completely exhausted before you rest. You do not need to explain why you need quiet. You do not need to reach your breaking point before you step back and breathe. Tomorrow, if you can, give yourself 20 quiet minutes. No phone. No pressure. No need to do it perfectly. Just be honest enough to notice what is inside you. And if, in that quiet moment, you hear yourself a little more clearly, then the pause has already done its work. As we close this episode, remember this. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to move at your own pace. Growth does not always look big or dramatic. Sometimes the most important change happens quietly when no one is watching. When you stop running from yourself and start listening. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope the days ahead feel a little softer. I hope your mind feels a little lighter. And I hope you remember that even in stillness, you are still moving forward. Have you ever felt like a part of your life suddenly disappeared after someone left? Not only the person, but also the small things that used to fill your days. The conversations you once had every evening. The messages that used to appear on your phone. The simple feeling that someone was there. When a relationship ends, the pain can feel very real and very personal. Sometimes you do not only miss the person. You miss the routine. You miss the familiarity. You miss the way life used to feel. And during moments like this, many people quietly ask themselves the same question. Will I ever feel this kind of connection again? If you have ever asked that question, you are not alone. Heartbreak is one of the most common human experiences. Almost everyone goes through it at some point in life. And yet, when it happens to us, it can feel incredibly personal, as if something irreplaceable has been taken away. Part of the reason heartbreak feels so painful is because it is not only emotional, it is also neurological. When we build a close relationship with someone, our brain slowly becomes familiar with that person. Their presence becomes part of our emotional routine. Their voice, their messages, their attention, all of these things begin to feel normal and safe. Over time, the brain links feelings of comfort and connection to that specific person. So when the relationship ends, the brain suddenly loses something it had learned to depend on, and it reacts to that loss. This is why heartbreak can feel so intense. It is not simply disappointment. It is the brain adjusting to change. Because of this, many people start to develop a quiet fear. They begin to wonder if deep connection is rare. They may think that the person they lost was the only one who could make them feel that way. But here is something important to remember. The ability to feel connection did not come from the other person alone. The warmth you felt, the care you showed, and the way you opened your heart all came from you. And that part of you still exists. Sometimes after heartbreak, we focus only on what ended. But life is still quietly moving forward. Every day we meet new people, have new conversations, and experience moments that we could never have predicted before. Human life is full of unexpected connections. Some connections are short, some stay longer, and some become meaningful chapters in our lives. Healing does not mean forgetting what happened. It simply means allowing yourself to slowly regain emotional balance and remembering that your ability to connect with others is still alive. And healing often happens more quietly than we expect. Sometimes we forget that emotions move like seasons. The sadness you feel today may seem heavy and endless, but emotions rarely stay the same forever. Just like waves in the ocean, they rise, they fall, and slowly they become calm again. With time, the pain that once felt overwhelming often becomes quieter. The memories soften, and the heart slowly finds its balance again. During this process, something important begins to happen inside you. You start to see a stronger version of yourself. A version of you that understands life a little more deeply and learns how to stand again even after falling. Healing is not about becoming someone completely new. It is about discovering the strength that was already inside you. So instead of only looking at what was lost, try to look gently within yourself. Inside you there is still resilience, courage, and the ability to rebuild your life. Step by step, you may realize that you are not just recovering from the past. You are quietly becoming a stronger and more grounded version of yourself. If you are navigating heartbreak right now, be patient with yourself. Your feelings are valid and what you experienced was real. But one ending does not define the rest of your life. Your story is still unfolding. New people will enter your life, and new experiences will appear in ways you cannot yet see. Most importantly, your ability to feel connection, warmth, and love is still part of who you are. Sometimes moving forward is not about forgetting the past. It is simply about trusting that life still holds more for you than you can currently see. Have you ever met someone who seems to glow without trying? Not the kind of glow that comes from perfect clothes, social media photos, or trying to impress everyone around them. I mean a quiet glow. The kind that makes people feel calm around them. When they enter a room, something changes. The atmosphere becomes softer and more relaxed. People listen when they speak, and even when they stay silent, the silence feels comfortable. I have met people like this before, and for a long time I wondered where that kind of glow came from. At first, I thought it came from confidence, success, or natural charisma. But the more I observed, the more I realized something surprising. Their glow did not come from the outside. It came from within. Many people believe a glow-up starts on the outside. Better clothes, better style, better photos. But that kind of glow is fragile. You can look perfect and still feel lost inside. You can receive attention and still feel unsure about who you are. Because real confidence is not something you wear. It is something you build. And it begins in the mind. When your mind becomes clear, something powerful starts to happen. You stop reacting to everything around you. You stop chasing every trend, every opinion, every distraction. Instead, you begin to choose. You choose what deserves your attention and what deserves your energy. And that simple ability to choose creates a quiet kind of strength. In a world that is constantly noisy, clarity becomes magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who think clearly and move with intention. Many people misunderstand confidence. They believe confidence means being loud, bold, or dominant. But real confidence is often calm. It appears in small moments. In how someone makes decisions, how they respond to pressure, and how they stay grounded when life becomes uncertain. When your mind is clear, you do not react immediately. You pause. You think. Then you respond with intention. And that quiet clarity is what people recognize as real confidence. People who feel secure within themselves do not try to prove their value in every conversation. They are comfortable with silence. They listen carefully. They speak when their words add meaning. And interestingly, psychology actually has a name for this kind of personality. It is called quiet ego. Quiet ego theory describes people whose sense of self is calm and stable. These people do not feel the need to constantly prove that they are smart, successful, or important. Instead of competing for attention, they focus on understanding others. They listen more. They react less. And when they speak, their words usually carry meaning. Because they are not trying to impress everyone, they naturally create a calm and comfortable atmosphere around them. Research shows that people often see individuals with a quiet ego as trustworthy, wise, and emotionally stable. In other words, a quiet ego is not weakness. It is a quiet form of strength. Psychologists have also noticed another interesting pattern. Calm people are often seen as more powerful and more trustworthy. This idea is sometimes called calm dominance. It means that people who stay composed, speak slowly, and react less emotionally are often perceived as more confident and capable. When someone remains calm in a difficult situation, Our brain interprets that calmness as a sign of control and stability. In other words, calmness sends a signal of inner strength. This is why many leaders, mentors, and wise people appear calm even when the situation around them is uncertain. Their calm behavior quietly tells others that they are grounded and in control. This kind of clarity does not appear overnight. It grows slowly. It grows when you read and allow new ideas to challenge your thinking. It grows when you write and turn scattered thoughts into something meaningful. It grows when you stay curious and allow yourself to be a beginner again. Over time, your thinking becomes sharper and your opinions become your own. Learning something new also keeps the mind humble. When you feel comfortable saying, "I don't know," you open the door to growth. Humility has its own quiet beauty. People feel safe around those who are curious, open, and willing to learn. Caring for your body also changes the way your mind feels. Movement releases stress. Stillness calms the nervous system. Little by little, your reactions slow down. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin to respond with awareness. And people can feel that calmness long before you say a single word. This kind of presence comes from inner stability, the ability to stay balanced inside your own mind. And when that stability becomes strong, confidence becomes natural. It is no longer something you perform. It is something you carry. So here is the truth. A real glow-up does not happen when you try to become someone else. It happens when your inner world becomes brighter, when your mind becomes clearer, when your curiosity stays alive, when your energy becomes calm and steady. And when that happens, something beautiful follows. Your life begins to glow naturally, not because you are trying to shine, but because the light inside you has finally become steady. I used to read a lot of books because I believed that knowledge would change my life quickly. In the beginning, I searched for answers everywhere, hoping to find one perfect idea that would solve everything. But over time I realized something simpler and more powerful. Growth does not come from one big idea. It comes from many small moments of learning, thinking, and reflecting. A page you read today, a thought you write down, a quiet moment when you understand yourself a little better. These small moments slowly shape who you become. And when you look back after some time, you notice something surprising. You did not just collect knowledge. You quietly became a wiser, calmer version of yourself. And before you go, I want to ask you something. When people meet you, what kind of energy do they feel? Because the glow that truly changes your life is not something you put on. It is something you build from within. And when the light inside you becomes steady, the world around you cannot help but shine with it.